In my early 20s, I found myself sitting in the back of a cop car, watching a cop search my car, knowing he was about to find around $2,000 worth of weed and take me to jail. And I was in shock. But honestly, if I had been paying attention, I would have seen it coming. You see, I'd actually been arrested just a couple months before this, and I had also been shot at just a couple months before that. My life was headed towards a cliff for a while now, so I shouldn't have been surprised that it had finally fallen off the edge. But for whatever reason, while I was sitting in the back of that cop car, my life in a total free fall, I made a decision, a commitment that I was gonna get my shit together and turn my life around. Now fast forward to today, I've raised over $100 million for private equity investments, I have 2 7-figure businesses, and most importantly, there's nothing in my life that resemble any of the patterns that led to me getting arrested. In this video, I'm gonna break down the 5-step process that I use to get my shit together and turn it all around. Number 1, find the flicker. If you're in the middle of a really low point or even a rock bottom moment, it can feel like everything around you is a sign that you're destined to fail. Whether you're depressed or out of shape, you've got toxic relationships, or you're just not making enough money, it can feel like everything is against you. The first step to get out of this is to search your mind and the reality around you to find any flicker of hope. You've got to find just a glimmer of something that you can point to, a true north that you can go towards. Looking back, and even if you have to go way back, is there anyone that really believed in you, especially when other people didn't?
I believe in you.
Are there any signs that you can accomplish way more than what you're showing right now that you can potentially tap into? You know, I'll never forget, most of my teachers in middle school thought I was kind of a class clown at best and probably the kind of kid they didn't want their children to hang around. But one of my teachers, Miss Bartholomew, she saw something in me that no other teacher saw. And frankly, I didn't even see it in myself, especially at the time. Despite being a little bit disruptive in class, she saw that I had a genuine curiosity about the world, and she made it clear that she thought it was going to help me a lot, especially in business. Now, in a world where most of my teachers thought I was the kind of student that was on a path to nowhere, this really meant a lot to me. And so after my big rock bottom moment, when I was starting to piece my life back together, I was just looking for some positive signs that I could point to. Now, even though this person wasn't even in my life at the time, I really felt like they saw something special deep in me that I hadn't yet taken full advantage of. For me, Miss Bartholomew was someone who just saw that I had more to give than others did. Who is that person for you? Find that flicker of hope and lean into it. Number 2, create your anchor. Usually, when you're at a low point, it means that there's probably a lot of chaos in your life. This means chaos in your relationships, chaos with your family, chaos at work, chaos at home. This can create incredible anxiety and frustration and complete disorder, and it's all around you. Now, for me, when I got arrested, my car was impounded. There were legal fees piling up. My family found out, and they were all incredibly disappointed. Every moment, it felt like something different was going wrong, and I can go on and on. But the real problem isn't the chaos itself. It's that you can't control it. In order to get out of this destructive loop, you've got to find a way to take control, even in the eye of the storm. Here's why. Losers are controlled by their surroundings. Winners take control of their lives. So you might have chaos swirling all around you, but it's important to take control, even if it's just for a few minutes a day. This will create an anchor in your life, and later you can build a foundation on that anchored space. Now, even if you're in the depths of shit right now, you can find something small that you can control. Like, for example, what helped me a lot was just taking control of 10 deep breaths in the morning. Just 10 deep breaths. That's all you have to do to create an anchor in your life. Now, there's been countless scientific studies about breath work and the positive impact it has on stress levels. But regardless of that, if you can commit to closing your eyes and just taking 10 deep breaths in the morning, you can not only give yourself agency over your life, but you can also build traction and momentum, specifically momentum that you keep the promises you make to yourself. Now, this seems silly, but this is actually a critical step to getting back on track. From here, you'll be able to make bigger and bigger promises to yourself later down the road. We'll talk more about that in number 4. Number 3, make your own ruler. Now, I've always been a pretty confident guy, but if I'm being honest, I think a big reason that I ended up living the life that eventually led me to get arrested is that I let other people's opinions of me get to me, and I let them create my measuring stick of my potential. Let me explain. I was super into heavy metal when I was growing up, and there was always a stigma associated with that. I mean, it might sound silly now, but keep in mind, this is in the wake of the Columbine shooting where Marilyn Manson was blamed because the shooters at Columbine listened to his music, and there was a stigma with metal because of it. But here's the thing. I may have been rambunctious and I may have presented myself like a little bit of a troublemaker, but the reality is I basically lived the life of a dedicated athlete through all of high school. I mean, all I cared about was track and cross country. And I wasn't super elite, but I was a 3-year MVP on my team, which came with reputation and notoriety. Now, during high school, I never drank except for on really rare occasions, and I never smoked or did drugs or anything like that. But as early as middle school, I remember hearing stories about parents not wanting their kids to hang out with me because of the stigma associated with heavy metal. And if I'm being honest, I think it got to me. Once I got out of high school and I lost the cadence of running and training, I went looking for another place to get that notoriety and reputation, and it led me to look for the easy way out, which was partying and being the guy that had weed and stuff like that. And like running, I wanted to go all in. I wanted to be the 3-time MVP of that lifestyle, and I was. And I think the truth is, whether I wanted to admit it or not, I was letting other people decide what ruler to use to measure where I should go in life. If you want to get your life to the next level, you have to use a different ruler for your success. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but the main one is other people's opinions can be wrong. Coming from someone who knows a lot about dedication and focus, I can tell you my success at running was way more of an indication of how successful I would be than whether or not I listened to Marilyn Manson. This is why it's important to make your own ruler. Are you good at video games? Good. Video games have been proven to have a positive impact on IQ, and Elon Musk, a billionaire, is a top-ranked Diablo player. If video games are your thing, this is now part of your ruler to indicate how far you can go in life. Like, do you feel like you're a very honest person? Great. Honesty is especially hard to come by in this world. So if that's you, that is now part of your ruler. Whatever your strengths are, find them and use them as a measurement of your success. And don't let other people's rulers impact your own, because their measurement of your potential is totally irrelevant. Number 4, focus and direct. One night in the run-up to me getting arrested, I was coming home from a party late at night with some friends, and I was driving aggressively, speeding, switching lanes, etc. I see this guy slowly start to walk across the street, nowhere near a crosswalk. And I switch lanes to avoid him, and as I do that, he starts speeding up as if he's trying to block me from going. And so I slam on the brakes, I hear the car go, "Arr!" And as this is happening, he walks around the car to the driver's seat, pulls out a gun and points it at my head. Then I slam on the gas and I take off, and as I'm driving away, I hear bang, bang, bang. Now, this is clearly insane, but the part of the story that actually still haunts me to this day is the next part. My honest reaction when this guy started to shoot was that I thought it was hilarious. I turned around to my friends and was like, oh my gosh, he's actually shooting, ha ha ha. Now, to clarify, I wasn't scared, and I also wasn't apathetic to life. It's not like I didn't care if I lived or died. The reality was, at that point in my life, I was living like nothing bad could happen to me. Even as this guy had pointed a gun to my head and started shooting, I was just thinking about how funny of a story it would be to tell later down the road. I had zero concern of facing any consequences. I was basically just an adrenaline junkie that was constantly looking for some kind of high. Now look, everyone has their vices. Mine was adrenaline. My risk-return calculation was all messed up in my head, and I was just constantly chasing adrenaline highs with no concern about any consequences. I did this with motorcycles, with girls, with partying, and frankly, I'm lucky to have lived through some of the decisions I made. But here's the thing, rather than turn this off, what I have found is I was able to turn all that hunger, all that thirst into something new. And for me, it was business. How many times have you heard a story about someone who struggled with addiction and then they turn it around and focus it on Brazilian jiu-jitsu or learning to code or working out? For me, that lust for adrenaline is still there, but rather than do wild shit that can get me killed, that never-ending thirst gets quenched when I get to walk out on stage in front of 1,000 people at a conference we're hosting. Whatever it is that's creating that hunger in you, use it. That thirst, that obsession, don't try to turn it off, because it's that exact thirst that can be used to get you out of where you currently are to where you want to go. Number 5, stop rejecting the call. Everyone that you know that you look up to has a story about their inflection point where they had an opportunity and went for it. Regardless of their background, there's always some moment where they were down and almost out, but they met the right person at the right time, or they got the perfect piece of advice, or the perfect opportunity just fell right into their lap. Now, for me, I talked about my teacher, Mrs. Bartholomew, who was someone that believed in me when other people didn't. When I look back on my life, I think of Miss Bartholomew as someone who created this opportunity for me to break through to the next stage of my life. But here's the thing. If you want to get your shit together, you've got to start realizing that these things are actually all around you. Sure, when you hear other people talk about their story, they talk about their inflection point seems inevitable, like it was destined to be. But the reason this feels like this is that they took action and they didn't let this opportunity pass them by. Now, sometimes I see people that are struggling to get their life on track and they're just sitting there ignoring open door after open door after open door. Sometimes, literally, they're praying, God, just send me a sign, when everything they need is right in front of them. Now, when you look back on your life, I'm sure there was a moment where you saw an opportunity and went for it. And now, looking back in hindsight, it feels like it was inevitable. But the truth is, the only reason it became an opportunity is because you actually took action. In short, opportunities are not given. They are created by you actually going for it. In fact, this very video could be the sign that you're looking for, but it's not because the video is good. It's because you can actually make it be part of your story if you take action from it. Whether it's making more money or getting sober or getting out of toxic relationships, it's up to you to see the opportunities and then take action. So just stop rejecting your call to adventure. Instead, start looking for sign after sign that 2025 will be your year. And if you take action, guess what? You'll be right. These are my tips for getting shit together in 2025. If you want to hear my honest advice for anyone who's looking for financial freedom, just click the video on your screen.